He heads growth at Gameberry Labs. Obviously, Gameberry is one of our big success stories out of India, right? Building for the world. And he looks after product US strategy. And he, in his own words, he's an engineer by education and a match 3 fan at heart, right? Like, aren't we all, right? Next up, Subash. He heads growth at Gameberry Labs. Obviously, Gameberry is one of our big success stories out of India, right? Building for the world. And he looks after product US strategy. And he, in his own words, he's an engineer by education and a match 3 fan at heart, right? Like, aren't we all, right? Next up, Subash from Moonfrog. Again, one of our early pioneers in terms of game success. Subhash, is the director of product at Moonfrog and obviously looks at monetization in a very close way. He looks at card and board games, and he's worked across, engineering, sales, and product teams at even e-commerce firms prior to gaming. So he brings like a variety of, experience. Finally, from Google, Siddharth. He leads the entire domestic market for Google Play. So, again, works very closely with developers on the Play Store and has a bunch of insights to share. All right, so our topic today is very vast, right? Monetization covers, especially in mobile gaming, it covers all the way from IIP to AdMon to other emerging sources of monetization. So we'll try to do best, and then obviously you can catch the panelists offline as well, right? I'm going to start off with Pradeep. Pradeep, you've monetized across a lot of interesting geographies, not just India, but obviously big in Middle East and big in the Hispanic markets. So what are the things that's changed for you over time, and what kind of IIP monetization changes for you over markets, right? With that, could you give us a flavor of monetization?
Sure. So earlier, 7 years back when we started, we didn't have much understanding about monetization or monetization framework. So we went with the very first principle kind of thinking process that you play Ludo and most of the time you always curse yourself, why didn't I get the number? So we thought that it will be very good if they can get some advantage, a chance to kind of a re-roll again. Correct? That's how the entire monetization journey for Gameberry started. So we introduced that and we saw our revenue coming in, people are buying that advantage. And over time, we have seen that people are liking that more and more advantage, they want to do more re-rolls in a single game. So that's how, what the perception of us is, people like that advantage, correct? Over the time, we have learned a couple of things, especially if I talk about Middle East market. I think people like a lot of exclusivity, correct? Like if you can give them an opportunity to become a part of some secret club or part of some community, they are ready to pay for it. Like the one feature that we introduced, like a VIP clubs, I think the traction was very high. People want to join in and they were ready to pay in. And for that, I think a lot of entry effect, customization, all sort of things they got and they kind of really value for it. Correct? One other thing that we have noticed in Middle Eastern market especially, they like a lot of personal connect, correct? So they want developers to kind of reach out to them, have a one-on-one discussion, understand their pain points. So as 2 years back, we kind of set up our customer service team, which can kind of speak Arabic and kind of interact with them. And what we have seen is the VIP purchases, the VIP players who are purchasing the game has skyrocketed after that, correct? So I will say that that is also one growth lever that we have used. So yeah, I think these kind of learning we had in terms of monetization over the years.
Right. Thanks a lot. Very specific examples. Thanks for sharing, exactly what's worked for you. Looks like IGDC has also taken a leaf out of your book. Like VIP passes are priced 10 times the delegate passes. So exclusivity is definitely working. Right. So Shravan, I'll move to you. At what stage, you look at also a bunch of games for Nazara, right? At what stage should one worry about monetization? Should they be worried at the time of selecting a game? Should it come after a month? When, and what kind of, packs and IAP have you seen working, right? Across various games?
Hi. So great question. The great part about, what we do at Nazara is we work with already developed games and try to scale them even more. And we also work with a lot of early stage developers, which is very refreshing for us because that brings in a lot of fresh perspective. I would say when it comes to the game itself, right when you start developing the game, right, when you know what genre you're going to develop for, you need to look at your benchmarks for that genre. For example, what we observe is in hyper-casual, almost when you look at your D30 retention, it's just around 2% or less, right? And 2% is a damn good benchmark. And if you look at your games like Match 3 or RPG or some of the other sorts of games, and this is talking to what of more I presented during IGDC roadshows, happy to share the presentation with you as well. We saw a D30 retention of almost 8%, 8 to 10%. So when you are thinking about monetization, what's going to work, what's not going to work, how engaged the user is, this is where you really got to begin. Always see what your competitor is doing and only then try and plan how your monetization is going to be. The other thing I would suggest is be flexible with your ad stacks. Always be agile, especially in the early days, because that kind of sets the tone against which you're going to be getting that revenue. I'm sorry, the second question?
Was, if there's specific, packs in IAP that you've seen work, right? Like, has it been mainly boosters? Like, is it coins for economy? Like, what kind of stuff is working?
So, some of the packs that we've seen work, heavily working with games like Animal Jam. I've seen subscriptions really work well in that genre because parents want a safe space for their kids to kind of go and explore, educate themselves, and also be curious about the entire gaming, the activity of gaming per se. So having come from that, we see subscriptions really work well in some genres. We've also seen one-time packs or expansion packs, if you may, work for games like cricket, right? Where we have a product called WCC, and that really works well where you go on unlocking new leagues and new tournaments. So this is some takeaways that I have seen personally, but you really have to plan and see what's the hook for your user.
Thanks a lot. Moving to Shashwath, right? Like, how does Meta help monetize games, right? Especially from a UA point of view. And, if you could, tell me, some of the other, insights you've seen around monetizing games, right? Like, from a meta point of view, right? Like, that will be very useful. And, in IAP specifically, right? Like, what we've seen is, like, for IAP to work, you might have a great game, great economy, but if you don't get buyers in, then you don't make money, right? So how does Meta help get buyers, specifically whales, right? Like,
yeah, so at Meta, we recently declared our Q3 results. We reported a daily active user base of 3.3 billion globally across the Meta platform. So that's the scale that firstly we have to offer. For gaming advertisers or developers specifically, we have a bunch of tools that they can basically leverage, right? The first one is audience network and instant games. Developers can quickly integrate their games using the audience network, providing a significant stream of revenue through in-app advertising, right? And I was discussing with a bunch of developers yesterday as well, and I see that as a significant source of revenue. The second one is instant games, like I said. I was just discussing with Subash as well. That's the other piece wherein users can quickly create, develop, and even distribute their games. The second one is in terms of running ads across the Meta platforms, right? Because Meta typically is a discovery-led platform. So typically what I'm trying to say is in a cluttered market where you have a bunch of games, you can basically put little monies, media monies behind it to basically promote your new game to drive initial traction, right? So that's the second part wherein we can help drive discovery of your specific games. The third one is basically just to leverage the Meta's advantage suite of solutions, right? Which is AI powered. So all of your campaigns, whether it's in terms of your budgets, whether it's in terms of your audiences, whether it's placements, you can basically use the Meta Advantage Plus solutions, wherein it's basically AI powered and does the stuff for you, right? Driving better traction. To answer your second question, which is fairly nuanced and which is on acquiring whales, right? At Meta, we basically have two specific solutions. The first one is targeted advertising, right? With Meta, you basically have precision targeting that an advertiser can do. I'll just give you a vague example. I was just talking to one of the developers and they basically saw strong correlation between people who play 2048, which is a puzzle game, and Formula One enthusiasts. So what they basically did is they targeted that initially once they started off the game, they could use the behavioral targeting just to acquire more users at scale, right? So first one is targeted advertising. The second one, which I think is not spoken a lot about, is personalization of ads, right? So typically high value users love ads that are personalized. They are able to relate to the personalization, and using Meta's AI powered creative solutions like flexible ads, you will be able to drive a lot of traction, right? So those were the two solutions to acquire whales.
Right. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for that, like, detailed insight, especially talking about the creative. It also tells you the complexity of, what is at play, right? Right from choice of campaigns to the choice of, the creatives that you use to actually make revenue work, right? Even a great game, if you're not bringing in the whales and buyers, is not going to start working from an IAP point of view. Siddharth, I want to move over to you. Like, again, continuing on the IAP stream, you work with a bunch of developers, right, with Google Play. So what can Google Play, and what have you seen in your experience that, helps them with monetization strategies, or some of the monetization strategies that developers can use?
Thanks, that's a great question. So at Google Play, yes, we have a lot of developers, and I can share some strategies without sharing developer names. Of course, we have the largest developer sitting with us also. So yeah, we don't give out developer names, but some of the strategies that we've consistently seen work across, across the pack is especially game localization. And when I say game localization, it's in 2-3 different parts. Game localization means, localizing your in-game items, localizing your in-game price points, tying up with local partnerships, and it carries across, not just India, it's global. So we have a lot of game developers who want to export their games outside India. We have a lot of game developers who develop games for India, inside India. So a lot of those things, when I say game localization, I just don't mean to say that, language is one aspect of it. Developers keep asking me that, hey, we've localized our game, we've changed our language, now what? So language localization is one aspect of it. I think another great aspect of localization would also be, price localization. That's where, so maybe let me just say this way that, you develop a game, you launch it in a country, but if you're not getting it at the right price point where you are launching, I think not a lot of people will buy your game. You won't just monetize. We've seen that across developers. So I think as developers, it's very, very important for you to do your, background homework on which country are you launching, what's the, how's the economy going, how the spending habits, how do people typically spend on your game genre, do people spend on sub-dollar prices there, do you want to launch games at a price point where, people get involved into your game economy, and then going forward, they spend on larger numbers, and then, larger price points. So all of those considerations need to be considered for increasing monetization on your game. And do also find out about what local partnerships work, like let's say in India, if you see, let's say if you launch something specifically partnering with payment partners, like it does well because a lot of payment partners are doing well in India. While let's say in certain global countries, payment partners might not be as big. Similarly, local festivities, like Holi may be very big in India, Diwali may be very big in India. Localizing a game for Holi, Diwali, offering special, promotions around these period may be very big. While if you're launching in, let's say, Southeast Asia, maybe Songkran is a festival to look out for. So you need to know how the local market works, and, need to focus on monetization across all of those aspects.
Right, fantastic.
Yeah.
Like good to hear like the various flavors of localization, and not just thinking language, right? Like, which is probably just the first layer. Finally, like when we talk IAP monetization, Subash, right? Like one of the important things to get right is game economy, right? So firstly, your thoughts on game economy, what's a great way to get it right? And secondly, if I'm a new developer just starting out, like I don't have too much DAU to figure this out, right? How do I figure it out?
That's a long answer question, but And the second one is obvious problem, which we also face for all our new games. So I'll try to shorten it and give the audience 2 examples so that you can understand how you can think of this problem statement of building an economy for IIP, basis the time. So I'll take the easy one. Most of you might have played Ludo or any board game. So we also have Ludo Club, a board game. So the way Ludo Club monetizes basis power-ups, as Pradeep was also saying, and collectibles. So the more games player plays, and the more is the adoption of collectibles, the more is the IIP monetization. So to achieve this, we always have this conversation in the company, like don't try to optimize, try to maximize, which comes not just by making the player more and pay more and more, it also comes with the retaining the player longer and longer, especially in a scenario where the CPIs are increasing. You have to retain every player as long as possible and try to monetize the user as long as possible. So here is what the mental model we have, especially for board games. Always give a currency to the player which is sufficient for him to enjoy the game for X minutes. Let's say 20, 25 minutes. I'm just taking an example as 20, 25 minutes, but it can be different for different games. So tune your sources and sinks to ensure that I am able to enjoy the game for some time and I feel good about it. It's like a movie, right? You go to a movie, pay something and watch a movie and enjoy it. That's a similar mental model we have in our games. And beyond 25 minutes is where player runs out of the free currency, and that's when he wants to purchase. So that is a mental framework we have. So enjoy the game for first X minutes, and then if you want to complete your events, quest, top the leaderboards, top the leagues, that's when you go beyond the 25 minutes on a daily basis, right? So that is when you run out of the free source that you get in the economy via daily bonus or ads, and you feel like, okay, I want to purchase now. Now, if a game is about collectibles, so the way we handle that scenario is, we first make the player experience those collectibles. Let's call it as common collectibles via ads, or maybe sometimes we just give it away for free. But once you enjoy it, you feel that human brain itches for, yeah, everybody has this, let me get a premium one. So that's when you start trying to make an IIP. So this is a mental framework of tuning the sources to ensure that players enjoy. I'll take a slightly different example for the benefit of audience. It is a social casino game. We have Teen Pati Gold. We don't monetize the user or put restrictions on the player if you want to play at lower stakes. You can literally enjoy the game for several minutes and hours. But when you want to play at higher stakes is where you have to purchase. So it works differently in a casino segment. So these are 2 examples to help you understand how do you monetize.
Right, thanks a lot. We'll pick your brains on that offline, right? Like, I think there's lots to pick on, right? I think we're running out of time faster than what was intended, but we'll try to change track now. We'll talk about like another facet of monetization. Like, we'll start, like maybe talking a little bit around ad monetization now, right? So, Shravan, is ad monetization even a viable business model, right? Like, is it, is there a difference in mindset between IIP and ad mon thinking? Like, if you can quickly shed some light on that.
Yeah, so, very interesting question, right? And this comes to us all the time when we are handling games that come from Nazara Publishing. And I think the primary mindset for a developer needs to be to understand engagement benchmarks for the kind of game they're building. Now, what we observed, and also studies talk to that, or observations from published articles talk to that, is in Asia, you see gambling and there was a different genre of game that gave a median of 5 minutes of engagement. Whereas in Europe, it was more about adventure, RPG, and tabletop games that gave a median engagement of 5 minutes. Now, if you're really trying to make money through ads, it's a function of 2 things, right? What your CAC is going to be, how low it is to try and get that user in, and also a function of how lucrative the monetization can be. In my opinion, if you're able to, I mean, an immediate thing to solve for or to go after is if you're able to build a game, a women-centric game, and having come from the brand space, I can safely tell you this, you will have a lot more lucrative advertising come into your game because brands tend to spend a lot more, especially on beauty and cosmetics, and a lot of that comes into the games when they target women. Right? That's just to give you some sort of understanding of how you have to have a good understanding of how the ad tech industry works and also how the gaming industry works to really understand who the advertisers are and who your audiences are. To answer the second question, again, could you repeat that?
Right. So, is there a quick difference in thinking, like while making an ad-mon-led game and
Yes, there is definitely a difference. An ad mod-led game would ideally be a lot more easier for the user to play. There is no barrier to entry in terms of mindset, whereas an in-app purchase heavy driven game might have more barriers to entry in terms of the user mindset and the user behavior, because I'd be happy playing something like, throw paper into the basket sort of a game. But if it comes to my preferences for more mid-core and hardcore games, I prefer a racing game versus, maybe a first-person shooter. So in that sense, you'd need to understand who your whales are and try and understand what the CAC for these whales are, and then go after how you design the game and what your IAP strategy is. Another key bit of information, within the first 14 days, if your user, especially if it's IAP driven, if your user is not spending between $1 and $5, then your game, you've lost that user, right? And you need to, 70% of your users who transact within the first 14 days are the ones we are going to try and retain. And that window really closes by the 20th, 21st day, where almost 80% of your paying users have already paid you on that first transaction. The other stat you'd want to really consider is that we see, this I read somewhere, which was very interesting. For 4 to 5 hours of gameplay, they're willing to pay around $10, right? And this was something that was a global benchmark that was published by one of the MMPs. So these are all things that you really got to go and delve into the depths, probably work with partners or your publishers and understand who you're building for and how you should build.
Got it. Thanks a lot. Moving around quickly, like continuing an admon, what are the metrics to focus on for a developer?
ROAS, of course, seems to be the ultimate goal for driving a lot of value for developers and advertisers as well. For gaming specifically, what I would definitely recommend is to have a couple of metrics in mind. One is your eCPMs, the other one being ARPU, depending on the monetization model that you have, whether it's IAA or IAP. From a meta standpoint, what we typically do is we have a couple of solutions over here as well, so that developers can maximize the revenues. The first one is value-based optimization or value-based maximization, right? Wherein gaming developers can basically optimize for a certain event, which is purchase, wherein you can pass back values. The second one is in-app optimization. So depending on the games that you have, you could have specific events. Right? The events could be stage completion, it could be games that are streamed, gameplays, so on and so forth, when you can optimize across these events as well. Lastly, there's of course dynamic ads. So if you are a publisher having multiple games and you want to figure out which game suits best across different geographies, you can also run dynamic ads, wherein Meta's AI-powered solutions basically help surface the relevant ads based on the interest and the behavior of the user as well.
Thanks a lot. Again, a lot of detail in the kind of campaigns that you can do for this. So, Subash, coming to you, have you dabbled with Admon? If you could quickly share a little bit about your journey on Admon or your take on what you think is an important thing to focus on for developers when it comes to Admon.
Yeah, when you integrate ads, always measure the ARPDAU considering both ads and IAPs. Don't just monitor the ARPDAU for ads and feel good about it, because it might be cannibalizing your IAP. That's one thing I would add. And another important thing which most developers may not be doing is ensure that you onboard a lot of ad networks, because we are in a stage, I think the world is moving from a stage of waterfalls to open bidding. So the more networks you have in open bidding, the more is the revenue you see it in your dashboards. We have multiple examples of it. Initially, it's only Facebook and Google. Then when we added Google, Facebook started performing better. So try to understand in basis countries, right? Not every network performs well in every country. So try to understand which country has good ad networks and inventory and try to onboard them. And it's guaranteed for you to see revenues, but that's a key learning from us. And yeah, have a good ad mediation partner. The multiple mediation partners in the market, so take the one that suits well.
Thanks a lot. Again, practical. Pradeep, you've largely stayed away. I know there's some admon you do, but largely stayed away from it. If you want to talk about that or about other kind of ad revenue, revenue sources. I think gifting is important for you. Is skins important for you? Can that work for others? If you can talk about the journey around some of these other kinds of monetization that work, right? Which is outside of the core action or the core currency and admon.
Sure. So in one of our game, Ludo Star. So actually, it's more of a cultural thing. If you monitor the Middle East market, there is a lot of focus on people living in communities, the singling in communities, correct? It is there in India, and in Middle Eastern culture it is way higher than India. Okay. So that is the key insight that we had, so cosmetics is really, really big for us, and why that is big is because we have built a community inside the game where a couple of people come in, do the voice interaction, send messages to each other, etc., etc. So they are living in community, and if you are living in community, signaling is a major part of it. Correct? So assume that you are going for a party and hundreds of people are coming. Definitely, you won't want to go with your typical car. You would want to go with a premium car, like a Porsche or something. Correct? So I think that's make it the community part of it. Make the cosmetic things viable, correct? So yeah, it's generally signaling, and I think this kind of things really work in Middle East. There's a large culture. If I just share one example, there was one Kuwait guy, and he kind of runs a Porsche showroom in Kuwait. So he was talking to us that he wants a Porsche kind of entry effects when he kind of enters in these community rooms. And he pitched to us, and we kind of made some, if you do this in the game, then we definitely would be able to do it for you. And that guy spent up, you can say, half of the price in which he could buy an actual Porsche. That much money he spent in the game to get that Porsche effect. But he was very sure that he wanted that effect. Correct. So yeah, it's a major driver. Cosmetics are major driver if your game has some bit of community inside it, and the culture promotes that kind of a signaling in the community. That's how I'll put it.
Amazing. Half of the money for a real Porsche. I'm going to go back and build a game for Middle East. That is a really big number. So that coming to you, Google Play, you obviously have access to massive amount of data, right? Player data, developer data. How is Google using all this data to help, developers monetize better?
Yeah, again, a great question. I think I get this question from a lot of developers. Yes, we're really passionate about data, and we do have a lot of data. And I think we're also passionate about sharing this data with developers to see them grow. So at Google Play, I would put it, let's say we have a breadth of a lot of data. We have a lot of, genre numbers. We of course have, developer data with us, but that's the beauty. We do not share one developer data with the other developer. Rather, we believe in the power, we say it's two ways, it's anonymization and aggregation. So what we do at Google is we look at all of these numbers, let's say it's, it's growth rates, it's DAUs, MAUs, app revenue per user, we take all those high, metrics and we aggregate them and anonymize them at a peer level. So we call it a peer set. And a lot of developers do not also know this, so I want to tell them that, we have in the Play console, we have a special feature which is where you can go, which is known as strategic guidance, where you can have a lot of, numbers across for your genre. So you know where you are. You can consider it like a magic mirror sort of place where you can, it's a magic monetization mirror, I would say, where you know where you are performing versus what your genre is performing. And if I have to quickly take an example, we actually, this was about 6 months back. It was a big developer. They were already monetizing very, very well. But I think what they did not know was, and when they looked at this data, was that they came to know that the monthly buyer ratio was much behind their peer level. And they deep dive down into this metric to understand why was it. And when they got deep into it, we understood that, the game economy, which of course I think Subash spoke about very initially also, it became very important. They were giving away a lot of, freebies initially for their new users, which they kind of controlled, and we saw even monetization skyrocket for them. So I would say it's like, at Google we have the breadth. We start giving you metrics on you to start looking at, so you can deep dive into those and then figure out where the problem might lie. So that's how I would, say we use data. And please, do look into your Play consoles to see the breadth of data that we have to offer, so we can help we can help your games to grow. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Play console versus your peer group. I mean, you can even define peer groups, right? And like.
Yes, you can. You can define peer groups the way you want it to be, and it's like a magic mirror for revenue, I would say. And this is not a term which I'm giving. It's actually one of the developer told me, who actually, use this to even increase and build on their revenues. So yeah.
Fabulous. So the last question, like very quickly, 15 seconds, for everybody in the audience or who might see the video later, if you were to give them either one mistake to avoid or one hack that you have for them, or both of them, like if you can come around, like starting with you, Siddharth.
Yeah, I can start. It's all related of what I said. I think one mistake is, again, pricing it right is very important. I know it's not the only thing that you have to do, but it's where rubber meets the road. Like, you do everything correct, but in terms of IAP, if the price is not correct, the user is going to come to that screen, he's not going to make that purchase because it's not going to be offering value in his mind. So I think pricing right, you have to do everything. Everything works in tandem, but pricing it right becomes very important. One mistake to avoid. So do your research well, understand the country where you're launching, understand what price points, the starter packs work for those countries, and you should definitely focus on those where people get involved within your game economy using the starter packs. And I think what you need to definitely be, so it's like, making your first impression, so make your first impression correct is what I would want to say. Avoid that mistake of pricing your product or pricing your SKU incorrectly.
Subash.
Just want to add to Siddharth's point. In US, in fact, our starter packs used to be very less. Then people used to say, yeah, if it is as long as similar to a Starbucks coffee, I'm fine. So we changed our initial packs from less than $1 to a couple of dollars. No impact on pay conversions or anything. So that's one key takeaway from Siddharth. So one key mistake to avoid from our experience is, please don't think that first I'll monetize via ads and then I'll move to IAP. That's a very, very long journey because the player behavior is already tuned that, okay, I'm going to get it via ads. It took for us more than a year or sometimes 2 years to move monetization from ads to IAPs on Ludo Club. So that's a biggest mistake we should try to avoid. One hack which you can try is if you're already admon heavy and you know that what players are unlocking using ads, try to make a premium version of that into an IAP that will work. And the second hack could be convince Google for a lesser platform. Just kidding.
Cool. So I think Suhas and Siddharth already talked about it. I think the economy is the most important part of the game. Without good economy, your game monetization will not work. Correct. So, and it is extremely, extremely important to control the inflows. a general rule of thumb to follow is the outflow to inflow ratio should be like inflow should be 65% of the outflow. So you should create a delta of about 35% if you want to really monetize. So I think we have learned the hard way. It's 7 years. I think we have made some mistakes in the start and we are correcting that. Still not corrected. One hack to follow, I think design your economy from a payer point of view. And like if I have to kind of give an example, always think what a typical whale, how much, like I would say that design your economy in such a way that a typical whale would be happy spending $1,000 a month in a game and he will be happy to spend it, correct? That's how you should think about the economy. If you can nail it, then the monetization will happen.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. I can see that we are on time. I think one thing to avoid definitely for developers is to prioritize monetization over user experience. So that's the only thing that I would request you to avoid.
I would say don't bombard your users with ads. One thing to avoid. First, understand how they're responding within the first 7 days. Classify who your payers are, who your users are, who come in for ads, and then design the game journey accordingly, right? And the one hack I would say is keep experimenting, whether it's ad monetization or user acquisition. I know it's a common sense thing, but more often than not, people get so engrossed in why something is not working rather than what else is there to make it work. So always step out, think, and attack the problem.
Thank you so much, all of you. Really wonderful insights. I think, there's lots of threads I can pull on, so I'm sure it's useful for everybody. And thank you everyone for being a very patient audience. We're out of time, so we can't take questions over here, but maybe offline you can catch any of the speakers if you want to. Right? Thank you so much. Thanks a lot, guys.